All right, great evening, everybody. Welcome today to our today's Series 6 class. Those of you that are on track of getting securities license on the industry, for those of you that are attending in today's class, is because you already had passed that first phase of getting securities license. See, the securities license consists of 3 tests, which is your SIE, and then right after that is your Series 6, which we're going to be covering today. And right after the Series 6 is going to be your Series 63. And right after that, you are officially securities licensed and eligible to be selling or be working as a registered representative to be selling mutual funds, variable annuities, and all that great stuff. So for today, I wanted to go over one of the things that I see a very common, from a lot of my students that have been taking this Series 6. And by the way, you see, we're just in the beginning of the year, and so far we already have had about 11 people pass their SIE, and no doubt in my mind, this month we'll have anywhere from 4 to 5 people pass the Series 6. But for today, those of you that are here live with me or out in our other location, do me a favor, right? Pull out a notepad and a pen. We're gonna do a little exercise today, right? Get a blank sheet of paper. And what you want to do within that blank sheet of paper, you want to divide it into 3 columns. So I'll give you guys about 2 to 3 seconds to divide it into 3 columns. The title of the page is going to be Suitability. See, the Series 6, a good portion of your test is going to be based on suitability, right? So within those 3 columns, on the very first column, you're going to put objective. On the middle column, you're going to put securities recommendations. And on the last column, which is the 3rd column, you're going to put mutual fund recommendations, right? So getting into suitability, for example, if you have a client that is looking for preservation of capital, capital safety, maybe he's not willing to, have his money in a very volatile market, wants to maybe protect their principal, what security recommendation would be appropriate for this client? And that would be a money market instrument or any type of certificate of deposit, the famous CDs. Now, on the 3rd column, what would be appropriate for a mutual fund recommendation for somebody that's looking for capital safety? And that would be any type of government bonds, government bond funds, and money market funds. So that would cover anybody that has the objective of capital safety, right? So going on to the next one, we're going to go now into if a client is looking for some type of growth moderate, right? Something that is not too aggressive, but at the same time is not too conservative either, right? We're right in the middle. That's why they're looking for something moderate, right? Something growth moderate. So for the securities recommendation, what would be appropriate for them? It would be, for example, a common stock, a large cap blue chip stocks, right? Whether it's large cap or blue chips, both are suitable for them. A defensive stock, right? What are type of defensive stocks? Anything that has to do with food, pharmaceuticals, utilities, and non-durable goods, right? Those are the type of securities recommendations that would be appropriate for a person that's looking for some type of growth moderate in their portfolio. Now, what would be appropriate for them that it's in the mutual fund recommendation side, right? So similar, it would be a large cap blue chip fund, a balance, right? If growth and income is an objective is the question, right? A defensive stock fund and an index fund. So one of the things that, I want you guys to be aware is that sometimes, when you're taking the exam, common sense doesn't hurt at all, right? If anything, it helps, right? Because when we think of a balance fund, right? Thinking of a balance fund, if you know nothing about nothing, right? And you have aggressive, very conservative, or balance, automatically, what should come to your head? A balance should be a mixture of both, right? Something a little aggressive, something a little conservative. That's why it's called a balanced fund. And that would be the type of appropriate client that is looking for that growth moderate. Now, what if you have that client that maybe it's in his late 20s, early 30s, mid 30s, right? Or even early 40s, still a very young gal or gentleman, right? And they want that growth aggressive, where they go like, you know what? I want to take as much advantage as I can. I want to be in something aggressive, right? So in the securities recommendation, what would be recommended for them? That would be, for example, some type of technology stocks, biotech stocks, bioengineer stocks. They're basically growing faster than the economy, right? What other types we'll consider? Cyclical stocks, right? Moving with the business cycle, raw materials, and durable goods. But when you think of growth, right? Like technology, right? Apple, I think it's a great example. Apple comes out with new iPhones every year. Feels like it, right? Although they all look the same. But according to name, there's something different. And even though they look the same, it doesn't stop my girlfriend from buying a new one every year. Why? Because the high definition or the camera or the picture looks a lot better according to her. And it's just like everybody else, what do? They go buy now a $1,500 phone, an $1,800 phone, even though their previous phone works perfectly fine, right? But when you think of a growth stock, Apple is a great example. How come? Because every year or every other year, they're always working on new technology. They're always working where there's some type of improvement, whether it's for their phones or watches or vision goggles or whatever it may be, that people are always willing to purchase, right? But at the same time, it's still aggressive. How come? Because what happens, for example, last I heard, like the vision goggles, some people got them, some people didn't, like the Apple vision goggles. I'm not sure if you've seen some of the few people wearing them. In my opinion, they look ridiculous, but hey, to each their own. But what happens if it's just a seasonal thing and they die out, right? See, that part of the investment goes down. It wasn't a win. So that's why they're considered growth aggressive. But when we're talking about mutual fund recommendation side for somebody that's growth aggressive, it would be on the sector funds, right? Specialized funds and special situation funds, right? I know here it might be a little bit more complicated because you think a specialized, can that be a good thing, or can that be more like a conservative thing, right? If you're specializing a fund for a client. But look at it this way. If you're specializing a fund, is because just remember this: specialized equals growth aggressive. Specialized equals growth aggressive. And look, whatever helps to memorize these certain things. One of the things that I've seen that help a few of my students and myself, that is that when I'm reading the material, number one is write it down, right? I believe writing it down with a pen and a notepad sticks to your mind a lot better than just reading it, right? But when you're writing notes compared to just mental notes, the odds of you remembering are a lot better, right? But at the same time, as you're reading it, I feel like when you read it out loud, you read it to yourself, right? So it helps you, maybe that subconscious mind, to pick it up and to remember it as well. So moving along into the other objective, what if the client objective is mainly income, right? That client is looking for income, doesn't care about growth, doesn't care about doubling the money. He's looking for a fund or security that will provide an income. So when it comes to the security side, for example, a security recommendation, what would be appropriate for them? That would be anything that like a debt security, right? Debt securities pay interest, which is a form of an income. Utility stocks, right? Large blue chip stocks with historically pays consistent dividends. Preferred stocks, right? They're really well known to pay also dividends, which is results of income, right? But when you think about an income, right, one of the things that sticks out right away, number one, debt securities. When you're looking at debt securities and equity securities, for example, debt securities is, number one, you're not the owner. The client is not the owner of the fund or the stock itself, right? What do I mean? If you were to purchase, let's just say, 100 shares of Apple, then you own a percentage of Apple. You own the 100 shares. But when you purchase a debt security, you're basically a loaner, right? The client's a loaner, meaning they don't have skin in the game. They're basically lending money, right? So similar, for example, think of a credit card or a loan. If you were to pull out an advance from a credit card, right? If you were to swipe that card for, let's just say, $1,000, and you have a fixed payment of 12 months or 24 months, and you're doing $30, $30, $30, but guess what? Every month, they take some type of interest, right? Not only are you paying them back your principal, but at the same time, you're paying them back interest. So debt securities is very similar. Debt securities, because you lend them money, at the end of maturity, yes, they'll pay you back your principal, but about the time, the lifetime of the debt security, which in a debt security normally pay every 6 months, other than as a Ginnie Mae. Ginnie Mae is the only ones that pay monthly. But for the normal part of a debt security, they pay every 6 months some type of interest to the customer. And then utility stock is common sense, right? This is kind of when you think about it, right? If right now, if you're a homeowner or you're renting an apartment or whatever it may be, right? And you're in charge of the bills, right? You pay the electricity, you pay the water, you pay the garbage. Ask yourself, do you pay the water every month or every 6 months? Do you pay electricity every month or every 6 months, right? If you pay every 6 months, there's a good chance you have no water or electricity. Obviously, you pay every month. So utility stocks, because people are paying into them every month, guess what? You as a owner of a utility stock, you actually make most of the time income every month as well, just as as customers are paying every month. And when we're talking about mutual funds, for example, in mutual funds, there are equity income funds, balance funds if growth and income is an objective, dividend funds, and bond funds, right? So when you look at somebody that's looking for income and they're asking them some type of mutual fund or what type of fund will be appropriate for them, look, dividend funds and bond funds
invited us. Well,
should
for you, for your
be,
birthday, for dinner.
yeah, somebody had a question. Not too sure. Okay. We're good. Okay, perfect. So when you think about it, for example, bond fund and dividend funds, what are dividends, right? For those of you that already been studying the Series 6 or already passed the SIE, obviously if you're here today is because you already passed that SIE exam. The dividends are basically some type of income that the company pays to stockholders, basically like company's doing great, here's some type of percentage that they'll pay. Normally pay anywhere from $2, $5 per share. So if the client has 1,000 shares, they can be making anywhere from $20 to $30, $500, depending obviously how much the client owns of the shares. And bond funds, again, bond are debt securities, right? They're debt. So bonds pay interest. So obviously it has to do with bonds. You're always going to have some type of income, right? So moving along into what are the client is looking for income, but at the same time, they're looking for that safety, right? That safety, they're very conservative. Like, yes, you know what? I want an income, but I still don't want to be my money somewhere in a position that's very volatile, right? Very at risk. I still want income, but I want that safety. So what would be appropriate for them? That would be a high grade investment grade bonds, one of them. And the other two would be government bonds and secure bonds. So going over, for example, high grade bonds, right? When you think of your report card, right? Let's go back to high school for a little bit. When you think of your report card, right? And might be a terrible example, but hopefully gets the point across, right? If you have two options, two students, two classmates to copy off, right? One of them, his grades average is a D, and the other grades average are A's, right? If you had the option to copy from the D student or copy from the A student, who would you copy off from, right? The A student, hopefully, right? How come? Because see, when you think about of a high grade A fund, it works the same way. The bond with the highest grade, which here is similar to our report card back in the day, if it's like an A or a triple A, right? That means it's a very high credible bond. The chances of them paying are very high. If the grade is a B or a D, the chances of them paying are very slim. So just remember that back of your head, right? Let's bring it back to high school a little bit. Who are you going to copy, the A student or the D student? And obviously, you would want to go based on the A with the highest grade. That would be more of that safety conservative side that the client would be looking for. And then government bonds, right? Of course, is one of the safest, right? Because if they don't pay, you know, who, for example, corporate bonds, if they go out of business, then they'll try to pay as much as they can, but at the end of the day, they're not obligated, right? And the government bond, they're one of the safest because obviously government ain't going anywhere, right? Because the government will always pay back their principal, and it's one of the safeties conservative, right? As far as we know, that's correct, right? And the third one is secured bonds. Again, it's just a little common sense here. And I know some of you that when you're taking the exam and you're like, you know, you're getting that, you know, that client wants that conservative, that income, that safety. And one of the options, let's just say it's a conservative or it's a secured bond. Nope, that's way too easy. That cannot be it, right? Because sometimes we overanalyze while we're doing the exam. We're overanalyzing like, no, it's got to be more difficult on this, right? But look, if they're looking for income and they're looking for safety and conservative, your secure bond is the way to go, right? Out of those three, it's your high grade A bonds, your government bonds, and your secure bonds. So that would cover in the sense of security recommendations. And now let's go into the mutual fund recommendations for that one. And that would be your investment grade bond fund, your government bond fund, and also your Ginnie Mae fund, right? So if you're noticing a little pattern, you know, it's very similar when it comes to the securities recommendation and obviously also the mutual fund recommendation. The only thing that kind of changes towards the end of the mutual fund, it says what? Fund, right? So it's very similar. So it's one of the things to kind of remember in one of those things. But getting into when it talks about Ginnie Mae funds, Ginnie Mae are basically for mortgages, right? And the reason why they're one of the safest and they provide income, because number one, they're backed by the mortgages, right? If they can't pay it, then they basically, you can get your money back from, they would sell their home and the mortgage, whatever comes up, there's enough to pay you back. And they provide income. How come? Ginnie Mae's are actually the only ones, the only type of fund that pays in a monthly basis interest. Every other type of fund or bond is going to be 6 months. But Ginnie Mae's is every month. And similar to the utility stock, right? We either give that example, utilities, how often you pay your bills every month, right? Your electricity bill, your water bill. And similar, now bringing it back to mortgages, right? How often do you pay your mortgage? Every month, every 3 months, every 6 months, or every year, right? There's a good chance if you haven't paid in the last 6 months, then you might be looking at foreclosure, right? So the right answer is we pay for mortgages every month. So since mortgages are paid every month, interest payments to the customer are paid to them every month as well, guys. So I'm going to go ahead and finish it off there. And I'm going to yes, that would be one of the secured bonds. Absolutely. The Ginnie Mae bonds would be categorized as one of the secured bonds. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it off there, guys. And thank you so much for bringing in. But now I'm going to be bringing up the great Hector